So good morning, everybody, and welcome to this masterclass on innovation procurement, which is devoted on how to price the value of innovation in innovation partnership. This will cover the theory of strategic options, and we will have the pleasure to have Professor Azzone with us. We are really sorry for the inconvenience that and any problem which was due to sending the wrong link. We understand that now this is sorted out, and so we can start with our webinar. I will start just by providing you some housekeeping rules. So please mute the mic and switch off your camera. You can submit your questions by using Slido. You have received the link. You can see it also now on the slide, the relevant code. We will read the questions, or we will ask you to precise the question directly. In such a case, of course, you should identify yourself and also switch on your mic and your camera. All the questions which remain unanswered will be then taken over in, and we will provide an answer in our LinkedIn group, which is called Agents of Innovation Procurement. If you, of course, have any technical problem, please contact us by mail. So let's come now to the content of today's webinar. The agenda covers two very distinguished speakers. The first one is Katharina Knapton-Wirlich, Head of Unit of Public Procurement Policy in the European Commission, DG GROW, and Professor Giovanni Azzone. Giovanni Azzone is full professor for corporate strategic decisions at Polytechnic University of Milan in Italy, where he was previously the dean. He's also a member of the board of the Italian Poste, Italian Mail Service, and also the chairman of IFOM, the Italian Foundation for Cancer Research, with a lot of previous experience both in public and private sector. So let's now discover, with the help of our distinguished speakers, something about how to price the value in innovation case on innovation partnership, and I pass the floor to Katharina for her introductory speech.
Thank you very much, Ivo, for introducing Professor Azzone and myself. I'm just the only thing that stands behind you and actually learning about the value of innovation in the innovation partnership. Since people are still connecting to the right link, that's probably less disturbing than it would otherwise have been for you to wait to what you really want to hear about. We actually received an overwhelming number of registrations for these masterclasses, almost 4 times as many as we could register. So you are the lucky winners, who we selected on the basis of your interest, on the basis of how you actually framed your wish to participate. We wanted as many member states as possible to be involved in these initiatives. We wanted to have local and central authorities represented, and also keeping space for some SMEs, non-profits, NGOs, and other organizations, so that we can all together take advantage of all the precious, diversified feedbacks on innovation partnership. As usual, we have instilled a wish on gender balance, but here we already had from the outside more ladies than gentlemen that wanted to participate. So for once, there was no need for us to see where could we find interested women. So there, up to the men to be more interested in innovation. It might be here that we as females have an advantage. Finally, in deciding with whom we would like to take that journey of the master classes, we took into consideration the replace to the questions that were included in the registration form, so that we can keep the discussion anchored to actually practical experiences. Although there's also some space for general awareness of the topic. So, you are all a varied bunch of people, and we are going to address various issues in this masterclass and the 2 following ones. And all this is as varied as the issue of determining the value of innovation itself. We all know how relevant this issue is to estimate accurately the value of the contract in an innovation partnership. Because the price should first cover all the research and development activities, and second, the value of the supplies, services, and works that are to be developed and will be procured at the end of the partnership. Since the requirements concerning the solution wanted are depending on the results of the research and development process, there is obviously, at the outset, considerable uncertainty during the award phase, leading to problems, especially in satisfying the requirements of our colleagues who deal with state aid, because they want to see that the procurement follows the market economy operator principle in order to exempt it from state aid notifications. And this uncertainty makes it more difficult to select in an objective manner the best tenders, as there is still no evidence at that time of the outcomes of the R&D process, which is still to come. So, is the innovation partnership a failure? A bad idea of bureaucrats in Brussels? No, we don't believe it, because it is the only procedure that really allows for a combination of research, innovation, and the procurement of the innovative solution. So the innovation partnership fosters the market uptake of innovation products in general. And we know that EU public procurement, that all of you, if you're working for administrations, can create a huge market for these innovative products due to the high value of public spending. That's not going to decrease in the coming years. So this is why we are strongly committed to support public buyers to develop and purchase innovative solutions using the innovation partnership, and to provide them with solutions to the problems that may arise in their applications. That is why we propose this masterclass to you. And we've asked 3 prestigious professors to provide us with their study defining a methodology to determine the value of the innovation partnership, so that the final price may be deemed free of state aid, but also so that you can see within your organization what it might actually cost at the end, and gain support and acceptance for this form of procurement. Each of the 3 methodologies will be the subject of one of the masterclasses. We, in fact, asked, in general, for an easy-to-apply methodology. I suppose our first speakers and the next one will always, oh, there is no really easy solution. But we tried. We all tried together for public buyers to use the methodology when estimating and negotiating the value of the innovative solutions. And still, this will be a deep exploration process, and it requires an effort, in addition to basic knowledge on pricing. For this reason, we decided to keep these masterclass meetings to a smaller number of participants than the webinars you might have followed in the past and will follow, hopefully, in the future. It's a kind of university seminar in which you play a testing and leading role. So I really encourage you to take the floor during the next hour and a half. We will overrun a bit, and I hope you will be available as we started late. Please point out any relevant application issue, share with us with the other participants, with our guests, any concern regarding the methodology presented today. That is the added value of this relatively reduced masterclass, a real discussion that will help all of us, you, the speaker, us at the European Commission, to develop our policies and application of the innovation partnership further. Finally, I believe that by the end of these 3 masterclasses, we will have a clearer understanding of how to price the value of the innovation in an innovation partnership. And that is essential for its further uptake. With that, and without further ado, please, Professor Azzone, I hand over to you.
So thank you very much for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the introductory remarks, and thank you for all of you for your decision to share this hour and a half with me discussing with the value of innovation partnership. I share my presentation, hoping that it works. Can you see it?
Yes, yes, we can.
Thank you very much. So this is the agenda I want to discuss with you. So briefly recalling the objective of the study that I will present, and the reference context, which was really well summarized by our first speaker, discussing what are the key points I want to deal with this proposed methodology. Then I will present the methodology in 2 steps somehow. First, the conceptual steps, so the idea of strategic option as a way to price the value of innovation. And second, how to apply this approach in practice, which is the effort that the buyer should put in practice to make this idea something that can be used in a real life bid. And finally, I will close my discussion with 2 specific points. One concerning the case of IPR, so how to value IPR within the innovation partnership, and the safeguard clauses that are required by the European directives concerning innovation partnership and supply in general. First of all, as it was said, the objective of this study was to develop an easy to apply, an easy to implement methodology that takes into account the fact that we as buyers are asked to deal with innovation partnership with 2 real relevant questions. The first one is how can we be sure that the price that we put in the bid do not provide the undue benefits to the suppliers? So which is the price limit for the contract that we must be sure not to overcome? And the second, if we have a bid with the offers of different suppliers, how can we understand which is the best of these possible offers for the administration? Of course, the best into economic terms. There are other issues that can be considered comparing different offers, but we are talking about the economic value for the administration of the offer. I said easy to apply or easy to implement. I think the most important issue for beginning for me is that we share what I mean by easy to apply or easy to implement. I worked on 2 conditions. The first one, I want to find a formula that can appear in a bid or in a contract, so a closed formula, like the formula you use in evaluating in an objective way the economic score of an offer in a bid. So something that is closed, it does not require simulation, it does not require, let's say, black box or something of the kind. but something that is really objective. And the second concerns data. So the idea was to be able to define a methodology where few data are required to the administration and data that the administration will be able to collect. So not something that is apparently easy, but it's impossible to find in practice, but something that we can show the administration how to find in a reasonable way. So 2 points: closed formula, few data required to the administration. Which is the issue we started from. It was really well defined in the introductory remarks, so we'll be very short in defining that. The issue concerns the fact that the innovation partnership is a procedure that involves at least two different steps, two different phases. In the first one, the administration invests in supporting research and innovation without being sure of the result. Then we have the purchasing of the product. The second stage is somehow more certain because the administration will define, will act, will do the purchase once the results of the innovation are consistent with the contractual specification. But of course, this redefined contractual specification were defined before the war changed, so in previous time. So we want to find something that helps the buyer to determine the objective value of the supply to the administration and verify compliance against the condition imposed by state aid rules. Sorry. Very briefly on these 2 points, which is the key critical issue of innovation partnership as concerned determining the objective value of the supply. It is in blue. The investment is certain, benefits are uncertain. The initial investment that is intended to support research and investment is well known, is well defined. The administration forces itself to pay something, but without a guarantee that the project will manage to obtain the required performance. Second point, even if the administration is successful, let's say, if the research and innovation process provide the development of a product or a service with the required performance, the rest of the world move, which means that during the time that passes between the first stage and the viability of the product, some other companies could have done something independently by the innovation partnership procedure, which means that we could find on the market a product or a service with the same performance as we deal with the innovation in the innovation partnership, same procedure, same performances, but maybe at a lower price or maybe better performance of the same price, which means in the end, the investment is certain, the benefits are uncertain. We have to balance uncertain benefits and certain investment. Second point concerns what we call the market economy principle, which means, as you know better than me, that the contract price should be the same as that which an hypothetical market operator would pay for a supply with the same characteristics. Why this is difficult to understand, to verify in innovation partnership? Two issues. The first one, some characteristics cannot be expressed in terms of tangible items of the product or services, but rather in terms of expected performances. So we don't have, let's say, a benchmark that is really clear, that is really objective to measure which is the market value of this tangible item. And the second is that the offers cannot be analyzed and compared just in terms of price and tangible performance, but also depend on the likelihood, on the probability, let's say, that the supplier will be able to reach the target performance. So we are somehow considering in the market value how we price the level of innovation and development competence of the suppliers. So it's more difficult than usually to verify the respect of the market economy principle. This is, let's say, what I can call, let's say, the pars destruens in Latin terms. So the difficulties in dealing with our objectives. Let's start now with the main part of the seminar, that is the pars construens. The first point is that these difficulties are not a specific of the innovation partnership. Anytime a company involves themselves in a research and development process, in a research and decision, the way the company deal with this decision is exactly the same as the way the public administration have to deal with the innovation partnership. In any research and development decision, the company experience a delay between the time when the investment is made and the time when the benefits will be apparent. So exactly as the contract for the innovation partnership is the issue, the capital budgeting decision for a market operating dealing with research and development. Second, the company who make research is not certain about the result. Research and development by definition is uncertain, which means that the company is not sure of the cash flow that will be generated by the research and development or innovation activities, but it gain a sort of opportunity, a sort of option, a sort of possibility of obtaining some benefits. So what do a generic, let's say, market operating dealing with research and development? It try to compare the investment it has to put in the project that is a certain with the value of the opportunity of the benefits provided by the project. This is called a strategic option. So what in research and development is done by a market operator to decide whether to invest money or not to invest money in a research and development and innovation project is comparing the investment with the value of the strategic option provided by the investment, of the strategic opportunity of doing something better than it's doing now. You see, it's really similar to what the public administration must do. The public administration must compare the investment in financing the research and development process with the value of the possibility to have something better than what is now available on the market. So our vision is that the way a public administration must deal with the innovation partnership in economic points, in economic terms, should be exactly the same as a private company will do in dealing with research and development decision. In this way, we, let's say, provide a more specific reading somehow of the market economy principle. We tell that operating according to market logic means acting in the same way as it would do a market operator if they had the same information available as a public administration. So if for, let's say, the theoretical market operator, it would be convenient to invest in the process of research and development, it means that for the public administration, at the same condition, with the same information, it would be convenient to invest in the innovation partnership. So, which are the two steps here? For the private company, the investment in research and development. For the public administration, the initial investment in the IP contract. For the private company, the result of the public activity, of the research and development activity could be successful or unsuccessful. If it will not be successful, the research and development will stop. If it will be successful, the private company would be able to obtain cash flows from the new product or service. At the same in the same way, if the public administration is successful, which means that the supplier is able to get to provide the expected performances, the result will be that the public administration will make the purchase, otherwise it will not make the purchase. How we can translate this in financial terms to provide what we wanted to do, so to have a sort of closed formula. As I said, the IP procedure is a procedure that involves at least two steps. In stage one, when the IP contract is signed, the administration finance with an investment that I call I, the development of a product service with target characteristics. This product must be viable within a certain amount of time. So we have a clear cash outflows for the public administration. The value of these cash outflows is net cash outflows at t equals 0. So at the moment 0, when the decision of starting the IP is taken, which is less the initial investment. I put minus the initial investment because it's a negative outflows. This is stage one. Stage two, we have time available. I call capital T the time available to end up the innovation stage. At time T, we have two different possibilities. The first one is the innovation process will be successful, which means that the administration will be able to undertake the purchase of the product or services under predefined economic conditions. I put as C the cost of the second stage purchase, so the cost of the purchase of the product or service with the required characteristics. If we define as PV, present value, the benefit for the administration of the new product, of the result of the IP with respect to what is currently on the market, we can define, we can indicate as the benefit for the public administration, NCF, the net cash flow at time capital T, the difference between the benefit of the IP result and the cost of the purchase. There is a benefit. Of course, we estimate that there is a benefit because we decided to invest in IP because we expected that the result of the IP would be better for the administration than what is already available on the market. So we expect to have some sort of possible benefit. We have a second possibility. The result is uncertain. The second possibility is that the innovation process will be unsuccessful, which means that the administration will not purchase the expected result of the innovation process. In that second case, the result for the administration is a poor investment. The result is to have in time T, capital T, a net cash flow which is 0. We don't have the purchase, we don't spend anything, but we don't gain any potential benefit from the IP result. So we have two cases, which is the expected result for the administration. It can be computed according to the estimated probability of success. So if we define as P the probability of success, the result, the expected value of the net cash flow for the administration is PV less C with the probability of P, with the probability of success, 0 in the other case, which means that the expected value is determined as PV less C multiplied by P. We are in the end of our complexity of calculation. If we put together the investment at time zero and the expected benefits at time t, capital T, we can express the expected value, the net expected value of the contract. The net value of the contract is the difference between the expected value of the benefits less the investment in development and supply cost. How we can measure this? We have the benefit that is PV less C multiplied by the probability of success, P multiplied PV less C. Of course, we must consider that this benefit will be obtained after some times, so at the end of the development process, and so we have to discount this value by 1.1 plus E at exponential T, less the starting investment. This is a closed formula. This is an objective formula. If we have the data that are required, we are able to measure in an objective way which is the net value for the administration of the IP. If this net value is more than zero, it means that the expected value for the administration of the IP procedure is more than zero, and so it's really convenient for the administration to be involved in the innovation partnership, which is, let's say, the boundary condition. Boundary condition is when the net value is zero, which means that for, let's say, a market operator is exactly the same doing or not doing this sort of research and development investment. In the same way, if the net value is equal to zero, for the public administration is exactly the same, provided being involved in the IP procedure or not being involved in the IP procedure. Let's do a simple example just to, let's say, be sure that we all share the view that is behind this formula. I was putting this on a sheet of paper. Let's consider an administration that is considering financing the development of a new energy production system to be used in its own offices. So the idea is I finance innovation that is directly useful for the operation of the public administration. Which is the key information that we need? On one hand, the decision to be involved in the IP procedure means that the public administration thinks that in terms of energy cost and energy consumption, the new product or services would be better than what is available on the market. And it means that the performance that are required by the public administration are better than what is available on the market, and we can, let's say, translate this better performance in lower cost for the administration. Let's assume that the total saving of the service is a benefit of 8 million euros with respect to what is already available on the market. It must be something that is quantified, that is consistent, because otherwise, why starting with an IP procedure? Second, what is written in the contract, and that again is something that must be known because it's part of the negotiation. In my opinion, in my example, let's say, we assume that the development phase will last 3 years, and the investment required by the supplier for financing the innovation phase is 1 million euros. And in the contract is defined that the purchase and installation of the equipment in the administration office will be done by the same suppliers if the innovation will be successful at a total cost of 5 million euros. Final point, the probability of success of the development phase is considered to be 80%. Let's, for the moment, consider that we know that. In the following slides, I will show you how this parameter can be determined by the single administration. So it's now, if we have the data, the issue is easy. We can determine which is the result for the administration if everything goes well. So if the result, if the innovation process will be successful, the administration in that case will spend 5 million euros to buy the equipment, will gain a expected cost reduction by 8 million euros, which means that the net impact will be 3 million euros. Of course, this is not certain. We have to weight this by the probability of success. As the probability of success was 0.8, it means that the expected value of the benefits is 2.4 million euros. We have to discount this value because it will be gained in 3 years' time. Here I assume that the risk-free cost of capital is 2%, which means that the net value of the innovation partnership procedure is 2.4 expected value, discounted at 2% for 3 years, less the initial investment that was done for supporting the innovation and development activities of the supplier. So the net value, in my example, result to be 1.26 million euros, which means that because this value is higher than 0, for the public administration, this contract, this IP procedure is convenient, is consistent with the market economy principle. This is the way we work with the closed formula. Let's go to the data that are, of course, a key issue. In the first column, you see all the data that are required to implement the methodology of strategic option to evaluate the IP procedure. We need 6 data. One is the investment required for the development phase, and this is known somehow because it's what is required by the supplier. So it's a thing that we know in any kind of purchasing procedure. Second, which is the predefined cost of the purchase if the investment will be successful. And again, this is something known. We can have this information during the negotiation stage. Third, the duration of the research phase. And again, this is something known because it's part of the deal with the supplier. We must know the risk-free rate for discounted future value. And again, this is known at the country level, so no problem. Which means that we have just 2 issues that we have to analyze in a deeper way, because these are the 2, let's say, issue of complexity in applying the strategic option approach to IP procedure. One is the expected value of the benefit for the administration if the research will be successful. This is in really the starting point of thinking to an IP procedure, because you decide that innovation could be useful for your administration if you think that innovation would lead to better performance than what is available on the market, but which means that it must be determined by the administration according to the target performance. And finally, last but not least in terms of complexity, which is the probability of success of the research. So I will focus the second part of my presentation on these 2 key issues. So how an administration can be supported in determining these 2 last parameters: present value of the benefit, expected value of the benefit, and probability of success of the research. Let's go directly. First one, that is the calculation of the benefits. we can have in practice three different cases. The first one is that the product or service allow the administration to reduce its cost compared to the solution on the market today. It was the case of the example I made a couple of minutes ago. The administration thinks that thanks to the services, its own internal cost will be reduced. In that case, PV is determined as the discounted value of the cost of the internal cost of the administration. Second possibility, the product or service will allow to create new services, not viable so far, or to improve the performance of the services that the administration provides to the user. So, for instance, a better way to move within a city or better services in a specific area. In this case, we have two possible sources of benefit to be considered. One is the expected revenues coming from services that are sold to the public, that are paid by the users. A second possibility concerns instead products or services that are not sold by the user to the users, do not provide direct revenues to the public administration, but that provide positive externalities to the user, either citizens or companies. In that sense, in that case, we have to estimate which is the value of these externalities exactly in the way as we do cost-benefit analysis according to the European Union guidelines for, let's say, for instance, new infrastructures or new service and opportunities. The third case is the case, let's say, where the administration have both the advantages. So the supply provide, on one hand, some advantages in terms of internal cost reduction, and on the other hand, the opportunity to provide new services or better services to the user. The third case is just a combination of the first two. So in the third case, you just add up the benefits in terms of cost and the benefits in terms of revenues.
Professor Azzone, sorry to interrupt. We have questions from one of our participants, which relates to maybe one of the previous slides. The question is from Carlos Garcia, which raised the point that he has some doubts concerning the discount interest rate, how we could justify our choice. I understand that the discounted cash flow approach, but in this methodology, calculating I is not always very easy to fix. How would you answer to this question?
Yes, well, in strategic option theory, use as a discount rate for the benefit the risk-free rate, which means the risk-free rate is the risk of, let's say, state titles on the market. Why we use the risk-free rate and not the cost of capital for the administration? That can be more complicated. Because the assumption is that at the moment when the decision will be taken by the administration, so either to make the purchase or not making the purchase, the scenario will be known. At present, let's say, in the first stage of the decision, you're not certain of what will happen in 2 or 3 or 4 years, but at the moment when you like to make the purchase, you will be certain whether the innovation process will be successful or will not be successful. So in that moment, the decision will be certain. It is clear. And this is the reason why in the strategic option theory, for the valuation of this kind of benefits, for the discount valuation of this kind of benefit, we use the risk-free interest rate, which is known. And so this is the way, let's say, that makes this easier somehow than with other methodology. I hope to be able to explain in a reasonable, clear way the issue.
Many thanks. Just let me check with Mr. Garcia, Carlos Garcia, whether this explanation was fine, whether he wants any supplementary clarification. If so, of course, Mr. Garcia, you can switch on your camera and put on your mic. Let's do it quickly, of course.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yes. Now the explanation is clear to me. Yes, I was also thinking about the usage of the weighted average cost of capital, but I understand the difficulties to use this alternative calculation, and of course the risk-free interest rate. It can be more easily achievable. Yeah. It is clear to me. Thanks.
Okay, you can go on. Many thanks, Giovanni.
Okay, thank you, Ivo. So, how to compute the present value in the case of reduction of the operating cost of the public administration? And now we use the cost of capital of the administration. So thank you for the question, because I will be more clear in the second step. Benefit of the public administration can be determined in the case that the IP was aimed at reducing the operating cost of the public administration according to the yearly savings that the administration expect to obtain thanks to the result of the IP procedure. In that case, too, we can have yearly saving that last just 1 year or that last more than 1 year. In that case, if they last more than 1 year, the present value is obtained as the discounted value of this benefit. In this case, I thanks Carlos for the question. We have to use the cost of capital, the administration weighted average cost of capital, to discount the future benefits, because in this part of the methodology, I has some sort of benefits for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and to add up these benefits in an overall measure of the present value, I must take into account the fact that money will be gained in different moment, and the value of money in different moment is not the same. I will move directly, if you agree, on an example just to show how this works. Uh, Here, I suppose that the public administration purchases through IP the development of a new service that reduce its annual facility management cost by 0.5 million euros. The supply covers the needs of the service for 3 years, and the cost of capital for the administration is 4%. The present value is determined as the annual saving, 0.5, multiplied by the sorry, the discounted value for 3 years of 0.5, that is the annual saving. You here find a simplified formula that can be used to, let's say, add up the benefits for more than 1 year if the annual benefit is stable, is exactly the same. I go directly to the result. If we have a present value, if we have, sorry, an annual saving of 0.5 million euro, the discounted value for 3 years is 0.5 multiplied 2.78. The result is 1.39 million, and this result is what I put in the closed formula as the PV, the present value of the expected benefit for the administration. What we do if we have a case where the public administration provide a service that do not act on its own cost, but provide benefits for the users. In that sense, the formula that must be used to determine the yearly benefit, the yearly advantage, take into account the number of users, of course, the duration of the effect, and the unit benefit for the users. This unit benefit can be the average unit price for services that are sold to citizen-owned companies, or to the value of the expected benefit for the users if we are talking about positive externalities. The formula is exactly the same, so we have a sum of benefits for a number of years equal to the duration of the effect that must be discounted to be taken to provide what we call the discounted value of this benefit. Again, just a simple example. Let's consider a service that will reduce the travel time on public transportation for people by 10 minutes. The benefit can be expressed through the value of the time saved by these people thanks to the result of the IP procedure. Let's put some numbers. Assume that every year there are 100,000 travelers, so we expect to have 100,000 travelers on this service. The value of time of people in the average is 12 euro at 4 hours. It is usually the average value of time considered, for instance, in infrastructure development in cost-benefit guidelines by the European Union. The duration of the supply is 3 years. The cost of capital is 4%. How I can determine the expected benefits? I consider the number of people, 100,000. These people will gain 12 euro per hour. Each people will gain 10 minutes, so 1 divided by 6 hours, which means that each people will gain 2 euros as a value of the saved time. 2 euros multiplied 100,000 means 200,000 euros per year, which means over 3 years a net value of 556,000 euros. So this is just a couple of examples to show you how to try to say understand and quantify the benefits, the overall benefits provided by the successful result of the innovation partnership. Let's go to the more complicated and more general issue, that is the estimation of the probability of success of the IP. So again, we are at the starting point. We are negotiating the IP with a possible supplier. How we can estimate the probability that this IP procedure will be successful? We suggest to use 3 possible approaches. The first one is benchmarking. The second is the analysis of the supplier's historical track record. And the third is an estimation by a group of experts. Benchmarking means analyzing the probability of success of the development phase of similar processes in the economy. The general assumption is that in the average, this probability will be the same probability that we assume in our IP procedure. So in our IP procedure, we say, let's assume that the behavior of our possible supplier will be the same behavior as the average company in the market. We refer to a relevant data set that is reported in Lee and Marcham, which identify an average success rate on the market at 61%. In the text of the study, in the second part of the text, you have a lot of tables that can be used by public suppliers to define, to move from this 61% to more specific success rate in terms, according to the industry, according to the country where the process is done, according to the size of the company, large company versus small and medium-sized enterprise, and so on. This is just an example to show you what you can understand on the tables. For instance, concern the different success rates in different industry. So the average is 61%, but we move from fast-moving consumer goods, where the average success rate is 51.1%, to software and services, where the average success rate is 66.5%. So we have on, let's say, thanks to benchmark, thanks to a viable data, thanks to a viable data set, a percentage, a probability of success that we can use to measure the net value of our IP procedure. Which is the main disadvantage of benchmarking? The main disadvantage is that we can not take into account the main differences in the competence when we have different users to different possible suppliers to compare. We use the 61% or whatever for all the companies, even if maybe the quality of the innovation and development competence of some of possible suppliers are better than the other. If we want to take into account this thing, we can use a different approach, that is the analysis of the historical track record of the potential supplier, which means we must ask the suppliers data on the success rate of their development processes. This average success rate in the past is used as an estimation of the probability of success for the IP in the future. If, for instance, let's say in a potential supplier, we have that 3 out of the last 10 innovation process were successful, we could consider a probability of success for the future for the IP procedure 3 divided by 10, which means 30%. Of course, the issue helps to distinguish between different suppliers. The critical problem is data from different companies are not always comparable between each other, which means that we can have some sort of faults with identifying the data for the different suppliers. Finally,
sorry, Giovanni, I would like to ask a question myself. What about if the supplier is a startup? So in such a case, it does not have an historical track record. How to deal with it?
You're perfectly right. Thank you for the question, Ivo. One critical issue in that approach is it can, let's say, advantage in an undue way large companies and established companies with respect to SME. So if we don't want to penalize small and medium enterprise or startups, the historical track record is not the right way. I will compare the method in a few minutes, and my issue is that this can be used, but it's not the better method in any situation. I don't know if I was...
Many thanks, many thanks. Let's go ahead.
The further thing is to entrust estimation to a group of experts. We are making IP in the field of energy. So let's take a group of energy experts to try to understand which is the real probability of success of the proposal of each supplier. This is much more expensive than the other solution, but of course, if the administration already appointed a group of experts for comparing different technical offers, the burden may be limited. So we don't just ask the expert to give, let's say, a score in terms of technical offers, but we ask them also to, let's say, define a sort of probability linked to this score. To help these experts, again, I refer to the material you have in the written text of the study. There are a few work in the literature that helps the evaluator to identify the set of elements that most influence the probability of success of a research and development of a research and development process, which means that the evaluators are not fully free. They have a set of issues that must be taken into account, and according to this set of issues, they provide in the end their final evaluation. I put this
Sorry
together.
to interrupt you again. We have another question again from Carlos Garcia. The question is, could in this case a reference be made to the outcome of a similar IP innovation partnership tenders at addressing similar but not the same product service? What do you think?
I thank Carlos for the answer, and I fully agree with him. Benchmarking means comparing with, let's say, other similar processes. If you have within the administration a history that is consistent with what you are doing, the data from that history are really useful. In my explanation, I, let's say, consider the case of, say, a more general case, which means that it's difficult that the administration have historical data for the IP procedure with the same in the same field as what is required now. And in that case, and even in that case, I think that benchmarking can be used because we have, let's say, generic data. Of course, if we have better data in the administration, why not using them? So I fully agree with Carlos.
Thanks.
Just to put on a table strengths and weaknesses of the approaches, benchmarking is inexpensive. It's just putting a number, taking the number on the from the tables and putting in the formula is viable. The main weakness is it does not allow to, let's say, take into account the different level of competence of different possible suppliers. Track record, cost is limited, always applicable, but could penalize, as from the Evo correct notice, some sort of new suppliers, which is startups, small and medium-sized companies, and whatever. And also, data from different companies are not always perfectly comparable with each other. Third, the Commission of Experts allows the comparison between solutions provided by different suppliers, but it's expensive and it's not fully objective. So it depends on the judgment of the suppliers. Which is my suggestion. Say if there is just one possible supplier, I dare say the real issue is just to be able to understand if the net value is higher than zero or lower than zero, which means that in this case, I think that benchmarking is enough, is the best treatment for the issue. No expensive, no problem of comparison between different possible suppliers because we just have one supplier that is able to provide this service and product. The other method can be used, they are allowed, but are somehow not the best solution. If we need to make a comparison, I think benchmark is not good because it does not allow to take into account innovation and development competence, and this is critical if I want to be successful in an IP procedure. The best treatment is the Commission of Experts, and usually when you have a bid with many suppliers, you are, let's say, forced somehow to have a Commission of Experts. Otherwise, you can record to historical track record with the limit that we discussed briefly before. So, which is the final decision? In the end, if we have a single supplier viable for the IP procedure, the IP is justified if the net value of the option is greater than zero. In case of different possible supplier, our suggestion is that the administration should prioritize the offer with the maximum net value of the option. Should prioritize in economical terms. Of course, maybe that other issue, more strategic, more, let's say, of any kind, are to be considered in the evaluation, but for the economic issue, the net value of the option is the, let's say, indicator that synthesize which is the result of the supplier. Of course, as I put in the slide, even when we have different suppliers, we must say choose somehow the supplier with the net value of the option higher than the others. Of course, only offer with a net value greater than zero must be considered, because if all the offers are lower than zero, which means that the public administration should not, in that case, use the IP procedure. I'm going to the end. Let's consider the two final things. Please, Ivo, interrupt me if I'm at the end of my time. Otherwise,
Go ahead, go ahead. We started at 45, so we are a few minutes after 1 hour.
Okay. The issue of IPR, the IP regulation allow the administration to opt for two possible solutions: exclusive development or sharing the IPRs with the supplier. In my opinion, from a strategic point of view, leaving the IPR with the suppliers, of course, with, let's say, the usual condition, which means the buyer must retain rights to protect its interest, free usage of license, right to license to other under market conditions, and so on. But leaving the IPR with the supplier is in many situations preferable. I just exclude situation where this is not possible due to security or strategic national interest to be protected. If, in any case, the administration thinks to be able to gain a relevant economic value by the IPR rights, from a mathematical point of view, it's rather easy to take into account the IPR in the decision process. Which is the advantage of the IPR? Which is the net value of the IPR? If we have the IPR, if the process is successful, we gain a value that I indicate as value of IPR, and I will explain in a minute how to measure it. Of course, the value of IPR will take place only if and only if the development stage will be successful. So we have an expected value that is the probability of success multiplied by the value of IPR discounted again at the risk-free rate. How we can measure this value of IPR? There are in general three approaches, but I assume that just two of these approaches could be used. The other is the cost method that is not consistent with the IP procedure. In the market value, we estimate what people could pay for, let's say, having for acquiring this IPR. So, which is the market value? How, if the administration would sell the IPR, how much it will gain? How we do that? By benchmarking what happened with similar products and services. The second possibility is what is called the economic benefits method, which measure the value of the IPR as the net present value of the expected cash flow that will be generated in the future by the IPR. So it means if the administration thinks to license the IPR externally in the future, it determines which are the expected cash flow, discounted cash flow generated by this licensing for all the years when the IPR right will be in place. Which is the best method? if I compare the two methods, I dare say that the market value is easier to implement. Of course, easier to implement if we have reliable data on sales of IPR for similar products. The economic benefit method can always be used, but it's usually difficult to estimate the economic life of the IPR and the expected cash flow because we still don't have this process, this product in place in the moment where we have to take our decision for the IP procedure. In general, I don't want to be discouraging, but I think that both approaches are really expensive and often unreliable. And I suggest that the public administration would consider these approaches if and only if we expect to have large inflows from the IPR. In general, my suggestion is to be more conservative and to ignore the potential value of the IPR.
Sorry, Giovanni, to interrupt. We
Yes.
still got another interesting question, which is, I think, very relevant to the topic you are presenting. Could the expected benefit for the buyer include a wider approach, for example, the TCO, total cost of ownership?
Certainly, and the answer is certainly yes. Certainly yes. The issue is we must consider all the benefits for the administration, and total cost of ownership is one way, for instance, for determining over the long run the total cost of the administration. So a reduction in the total cost of ownership is in a clear way a way to determine the benefits for the administration of the IP procedure. So it's one of the methods that can be used to determine the present value of the expected benefits of the IP procedure. If you agree, I go to the last point. It is the safeguard clauses that, let's say, start from the fact that in any case, IP implies a certain level of risk. So we have an expected value. We cannot assume that there is no risk. The expected value takes into account the risk for the administration and for the supplier. To limit this risk, an administration may introduce safeguard clauses, and I remind you what is provided for in European directives, which is the double proportionality test. First, the duration and value of the different phases should reflect the degree of innovation of the proposed solution. And second, the estimated value of supplies, services, or work shall not be disproportionate in relation to the investment required for their development. Let's spend the last 5 minutes to explain how this condition can be taken into account in the method we suggested. The first condition requires that the investment and the duration for each stage of development are consistent with the level of innovation of the proposal. How can a public administration be supported in checking this condition? Again, I refer to the written part of the study, or the second part of the study, where we provide some sort of, let's say, reference materials and guidelines for the implementation. Again, research by Lee and Markham help to provide some benchmark for the duration of the product development process in different industries for different level of innovation. So you can identify the industry, of course, and the level of innovation that is required. And according to that, you have some sort of benchmark telling you that if the process in the average lasts 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And so we can check if this is consistent with the proposal of the potential supplier. The second condition is, let's say, more tricky somehow, because it means that the ratio between the starting investment in development and the cost of purchase, I divided by C, is not disproportionate. What do we mean by not disproportionate? We can read this in two ways. One is it must not be too high, and the other is it must not be too low. Saying it must not be too high means that we must not set C, so the cost of purchase, too low with respect to the investment. This means that this is reasonable, because if C is very low, if the cost of purchase is very low, the supplier will get the main share of its income from the development stage, which means that if the development will be as successful, the cost of the failure will be mostly borne by the administration. So if the cost of supply, the cost of purchase is too low with respect to the initial investment, the risk is fully on the public administration and not on the private supplier. This is something that must be checked, and we think that the administration can balance such risk by dividing the financing of the product development into several phases, and by binding those phases after the first to the achievement of the specific intermediate target, so that if the milestones are not obtained, the investment is stopped almost immediately, which means that the risk for the administration is limited. In the written part of the study, you have also an example of how the formula must be modified to take into account to deal with this specific situation. The other possibility, the other way of reading the second condition is not setting C too high, so not having an investment that is limited with respect to the cost of purchase. In that case, the issue, the idea is that if the cost of purchase is too high, we are granting a large quantity of sales to the supplier that could create an undue advantage. This issue is somehow more questionable, because if thanks to the IP, the administration can purchase a service at a really competitive price, why should we limit the volume of the supply? Of course, this could create, in the end, an economic disadvantage to the administration. So, to balance such risk, in our opinion, an administration could define in the contract both a minimum level of purchasing to compensate the risk of the supplier, and an additional one that would be purchased only if no product and services with better performance and lower price will be available on the market. So in that sense, in that way, we think we can, let's say, balance the two possible risks in a reasonable way. I end up now. I think I stayed more or less in the timetable, and I'm, of course, at your disposal for any other question and comments.
So many thanks for this very interesting presentation and these very interesting lessons. First, I would like to open the floor and to see whether any of the participants would like to put forward any further questions to Professor Azzone. They can do it as I've seen there are already some questions, but to just recall it, they can do it by introducing the question via Slido. Or if they want, they can also interact directly and switch on their mic and their camera and ask the question. In the meantime, while participants reflect on further possible questions, I think we can also take and answer one of the previous questions, which was raised during the presentation and which is more of a general nature. The question was coming from Joanna Prodan. She was asking whether the European Commission intends to publish or recommend such a methodology for estimating the value of the contract in innovation partnership, and whether there are other tools to support contracting authorities and entities in developing innovation partnerships. So in this respect, I would like to precise that the 3 studies, including the one which has been presented today, are already available on our website, and we will soon show it to you, the link. Also, we have published, as other tools, 2 specific brochures which relate to innovation procurement. One of them is specifically devoted to support buyers in the preparation of an innovation partnership. This brochure has been prepared as a result of contacts we have had with many buyers which have already implemented an innovation partnership, and they are about operational and practical guidance from practitioners. The second brochure is also partially related to the innovation partnership, which is a guide on which let's say guides buyers on identifying the right public procurement procedures in support of innovation, depending also from the innovative solution which is being sought, from the level of innovation which is being sought, because we consider that certain procedure provide, let's say, a lower level of innovation, while either, as the innovation partnership, which also includes research, can provide a more substantial level of development of an innovative solution. In the meantime, I also see that another question has come. So the question is a very nice one. It's from Anne Shrivers. It's how robust is this methodology in dealing with very volatile markets, for example, in the case of energy?
Well, we cannot, let's say, avoid uncertainty. So we must take into account uncertainty. If we have if we have a market that are volatile, we must take into account. What I can say is that strategic option theory was developed exactly for really volatile markets. So the real issue is that it is somehow able to keep uncertainty within the formula. So with respect to other methods that assume more stable market, I think it's reasonably robust. Of course, when I have, let's say, a really volatile market, when I measure the present value of the expected benefits, usually I must be more conservative and take into account that the risk of innovation is higher. But there are no reason why this approach should not be used in really volatile markets, from a theoretical point of view, at least.
Many thanks. Let's see if there is any further question. We still have a few minutes before concluding. It doesn't seem to be the case. So, well, first, would like to thank Professor Azzone for his lesson, and for also all of you who have been participating to today's event. We hope that you enjoyed the lesson, the masterclass, and also that you found it useful. Well, we have also, as this is part of a cycle of events, we have two further events. On the 7th of June, Professor Philippe Portier will present his theory on competitive pricing. And on the 21st of June, we will have Professor Romaric Servajan-Hilst, which will present his further methodology on estimating and negotiating approaches. We really invite you to follow all of them in order to gain a full understanding of this specific issue. Also, we have, and we take the opportunity to promote our forthcoming events. On the 16th of June, the webinar as part of the lunchtime talks, which is part of the cycle on the social procurement and on the guidance on social procurement, which is planned on 16th of June at 12 o'clock, lunchtime talks. The next one, of course, is our newsletter, which provides up-to-date information, events, funding opportunities on projects and regulatory developments in the field of public procurement. So it's the Public Procurement Gazette, and you can always subscribe to it in case you have not done it yet. Also, would like to take the opportunity to recall, in case you are interested, to participate in the second edition of the European Innovation Procurement Award, which is open for submission until the 22nd of June. There are 3 different categories, and the prize, which is granted, is 75,000 euros for the winners and 25,000 euros for the runner-up in each of the 3 categories. And also, of course, you can always follow us on our LinkedIn channels, Actors for Social Impact Procurement for social aspects, and Agents of Innovation Procurement for innovation. And clearly, today's masterclass from Professor Azzone will be available, and you can watch it again on the YouTube channel of DigiGrow, where you can also find all the other webinars. And also, I would like finally to thank the team which has helped us in the preparation of this masterclass, and a special thank to Silvia Pagnotta, which has greatly helped, to Marie and Samira. And I think that with this, if there is no further question from you, we can close today's masterclass. Many thanks.